and welcome to Beacon of Creation, a weekly podcast on game design through the lens of Magic the Gathering. I'm Juliet.
And I'm Khord.
Khord, you've been designing some cards.
I have. I've got a micro set.
Wow, a micro set. Now, if I remember right from last week's episode, a micro set was a cool new sort of format design, allowing people to design cards in like 45 card chunks rather than needing to design a whole 280 plus card set or only 12 cards for a jumpstart pack or 15 cards for a single, booster.
That's right.
And that would be a fun way to do like duplicate sealed together, where we would combine our different 45 card things together into a sealed environment.
Yeah, that's correct. And there's like a couple different ways to do it. The prompt had a little note that a micro set should feel a little bit like a distilled version of a standard set. And mine is a distilled version of a standard set I'm working on, or standard style set.
Cool. And so the prompt for each of these sets that we're talking about, the one word prompt was technique. How did you interpret the prompt of technique?
I knew from the idea of the micro set that I wanted to pull cards and concepts from my main standard set. And so I decided to try and take cards that felt like they had like unique play patterns that would require some technique to play and some unique play styles around.
And so that gives us a micro set called Voc-Gal technique.
Yes, Voc-Gal techniques, while the main set is Voc-Gal echoes.
Oh, so that's your more like standard style set
that I've been working on, yeah.
How long have you been working on Voc-Gal Echoes?
I've been working on it since the summer of 2023 is when like the idea of a set based on vocal performance came into my head.
And listener, if you're hearing this, that was about 2 years ago for our time, but for you, it could be 20 years ago or last week if you are very adept at podcasts. You figured out that technique.
If you have the technique of time travel,
mm-hmm.
I feel like there's better things you could do than go back in time to just listen to a podcast before it came out. But it is a unique way to use the technique.
We even had a podcast in this feed on that topic from a alternate timeline podcast called Beacon of Tomorrows, which was
fun.
The podcast all about time travel, but they did a Magic the Gathering episode talking about time warp cards. It's a good episode. Anyways, thinking about looking at some of these mechanics from Voc-Gal techniques, I would love to talk about battles and this kind of unique way you have of presenting very simple battles that can be printed with an upright card and a single-faced card, which are two things that we haven't seen so far in canon battles.
Yeah, so for example, let's look at one of the cards I have here with that style of battle. This is Dominarian Dragon. You can cast it for 6 and a red, cast a 5/5 dragon creature with flying and an activated ability that costs red and says this creature gets +1/+0 until end of turn. Or you can cast Rite of Shiv for 1 and a red to cast a battle summon with 7 defense counters protected by an opponent, much like a siege. And then when you defeat the battle, it becomes the creature. So it doesn't leave the battlefield, it just stops being a battle and becomes the creature half of the card.
Sure. And it looks like there's multiple of these, maybe a cycle. They're all common? Is that right?
Yes. There's a cycle of 5 commons based on kind of iconic large creatures in each of the colors.
Mm-hmm. And so in addition to this Shivan Dragon, we have Rite of Sarah with Dominarian Angel for this also 6 and a white, common 4/4 flying vigilant. And then the Rite is 1 and so there's this kind of tightness to the cycle of 6 and a color for the main cost, and then 1 and that color for its battle.
Yep, they all also have exactly 7 defense counters on them, and that is for multiple reasons. One, I had to basically manually add the defense counter thing, and so I didn't want to generate a bunch of different ones for tweaking. But the cycle is based on Shivan Dragon, Sarah Angel, Tolarian Terror, the Maffield Mawfield twins
From Innistrad, yeah.
from Innistrad, and I forget what the green one is based off of because I had to reflavor it a little bit more than the rest. It's a vanilla 12/8 dinosaur.
Oh, right. Quake Strider Ceratops.
Yes, Quake Strider Ceratops. Yeah, which
Very
is
fun.
normally 3 green, green, green.
And here, cast for 6 and a green, or 1 and a green, and chip away.
7 damage.
Yeah, that makes sense. So, if you're going to be casting this for its full cost, I wonder if there are any ways in this set to get extra colorless mana?
There are. One of the common tokens is a first in Voc-Gal. It is a saga token called a murmur. Saga tokens are, as sagas, they enter with 1 counter, and then they get a counter each turn and trigger new chapter abilities, and then when they run out of chapter abilities, you sacrifice them. Murmurs have the chapter abilities 2 and 3 add colorless. So on the turn after a murmur enters and the turn after that, you'll get an extra colorless mana, and then they will sacrifice themselves.
Mm. And so these tokens are something that we could kind of easily create in a way to make a little temporary mana rock. So we could see something like Storykeeper, which is another common. It's 2 and a green for 3/2 creature dwarf bard. With when Storykeeper enters, create a murmur token. And then it's so neat to have a saga with such simple reminder text. It's a colorless saga murmur enchantment with chapter 2, chapter 3, add a colorless.
Yes, and for those just listening, the reminder text inline has the little cutout versions of the chapter symbols.
Little hexagon with Roman
Yeah,
numerals
the
in it.
hexagon with Roman numerals. So it's not spelled out, which was something I spent a little bit of time figuring out how to do
Mhm.
for the main set.
So in addition to then, oh, I can make my own murmur tokens, I could also do something like Tuck Within Harmony, which is a common 2 and a blue for an instant. The owner of target non-land permanent puts it on the top or bottom of their library, then they create a murmur token.
Yeah, that one is it's a cheaper effect than you'd normally get for one of these mechanics, but you're also giving your opponent mana on their next 2 turns. So you're, getting a little bit of a discount, but giving them a gift, which is not in this set, but is a little bit what that card was inspired by.
It's neat to think about the token also being having this extra token type of murmur then like attached to it that has, I don't know if it technically has a meaning, but it's got rules meeting to it in the sense of like an identified token. But there is like a blue green enchantment here. Sorry, no, like a blue green uncommon here. Sinai Songclade's Start for blue and a green for a 1/1 uncommon. The legendary creature Snake Elf Bard, and it has murmurs you control have on the second chapter. Put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control, in addition to its other ability. So you
Yes.
can append extra steps to, and as long as you have this out, the murmur could come now or later or, whenever. And it works out in this neat way.
Yeah, that was if you notice a number of the cards in the set have different ways to tie into the main token of the murmur, uh, and that's one of the I think more interesting ways to play with saga tokens and whatnot by adding abilities or shifting things around where they normally wouldn't, or having the saga not sacrifice itself at the end, those sorts of things.
Can you tell me a little bit about ways that people might spend that extra colorless mana in addition to those 7 mana creature battle sort of summons?
Yeah. So in addition to the, just generally ramping with murmurs, getting a little bit of extra mana on your next couple main phases, um, the set has a number of colorless hybrid cards and colorless two-brid cards. So that colorless mana, in some moments, will be giving you extra effects. For example, we have a green uncommon, which is from the main set. I actually realized I copied it from the main set, and it's not one in the micro set. But it's for 2 and a green and instant that gives +3/+3 and trample to a creature. But if you spent colorless mana specifically to cast it, you'd also draw a card. Or some examples from the actual micro set. There is a spirit creature with ward 2 colorless. So you can either pay 2 mana of any color or a colorless mana, which, could come from your sagas, which you'd be able to use on your main phase, or if you have other ways of using colorless or getting colorless mana, perhaps from a land in another set, you could spend it that way. Which, actually, do we have... We do have one source of colorless mana in the micro sets outside of Murmurs.
Oh. Huh.
Which
I'm trying to
is
think of one.
from... It's from Archery.
Okay, cool. Just making sure. I was like, it's not from my set. I didn't forget it. So.
Yeah,
Okay,
it's from Archery. It's a artifact for 3 called Fletching. Has tap, add 1 mana of any color, and tap, add colorless, spend this mana only to activate abilities of equipment you control, which does not work, sadly, with any of the Murmur payoff cards.
So you end up valuing in this particular environment where there isn't, a ton of like Caverns of Koilos sort of lands,
Yeah, no
duels
utility
that also
lands.
count for colorless. Then, or utility lands in general that would have just a colorless tap. The Murmurs end up being even more useful if you want to get those specific sort of payoffs. Or, looking at Harmonic Hydra, which is 3 of the 2 colorless 2 grid. So you can spend 2 generic or 1 explicit colorless. And so you can cast this for 3, 4, 5, or 6 mana. Harmonic Hydra is a 0/0 enchantment creature Hydra Bard at common with this creature enters with 4+1/+1 counters. And then 2 grid, put a +1 counter on. So if you have good access to colorless, you can make this 4/4 for 3 mana and then just keep making it bigger and bigger if your whole deck is just waste.
Yeah, like for example, if you get, if you manage to get 3 Murmurs in one turn, right? On the next turn, you could cast this for the mana from those Murmurs. And then on the turn after that, you could put a +1/+1 counter on it with 2 of that mana, and then pay 2 more mana to put another one. So you get, a 6/6 for effectively 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 mana. Which, probably not amazing, but there's a lot of versatility in this, common 4/4 at base.
I think the audience might also start to pick up a little bit on, okay, we've got a Songclade, we've got Murmur, Storykeeper, Tuck Within Harmony, Backup Singer, Harmonic Hydra. There's a music theme to all of Voc-Gal, right? Like each different color is doing some kind of music stuff, even if some of them are doing it in slightly different ways than each other.
Yes. The general overarching theme of Voc-Gal is specifically vocal performance. So it's not all music.
Voc-Gal, like vocal.
Yes.
See?
Vocal. Yeah. So for example, the Storykeeper, right? The dwarf bard that we talked about earlier that creates a murmur token. They're not a singer. They tell stories. They're a different type of vocal performance.
Sure. That makes sense. I can see that motif. And speaking of motif, we've got another mechanic to be highlighting that the backup singer also has, which is Motif Igniter. That's a 3/1 uncommon for 3 and a red. 4 mana for 3/1. Creature Elf Bard. It has prowess, and then finale. Whenever an enchantment is put into your graveyard from the battlefield, add a red mana. You don't lose this mana as steps and phases.
Yeah. Finale, which is a ability word, means that the ability that follows is going to have whenever an enchantment is put into your graveyard from the battlefield, and then some form of an effect. There's a number of different cards in this with Finale. It's meant to be, you get a reward for finishing a saga, you get a reward for your enchantment creatures dying, or maybe not a reward, but a little bit of relief back when they do. And there's a couple different, ways you can play with this. You can lean into the wanting to, get a bunch of sagas out, get your murmur tokens, and, kind of consistently get the finale triggers as they end. There's, a number of enchantment creatures, so you might want to try and play around with some form of aristocrats with finale. Or, and this doesn't have a lot of examples in Voc-Gal itself, or in Voc-Gal techniques, but a good way to, if you're trying to potentially stack a bunch of finale triggers together, would be auras. If you had a bunch of auras on one creature, and that creature died, you'd get, a finale trigger for each of those auras being put into the graveyard from the battlefield. As of current, there are 2 auras in the microset formats, both from Verathal, and both auras you probably do not want to be putting on your own creatures.
Right. Trying to think. So Chains of Holy Fire,
Yep.
from Verathal, which if you want to hear more about Verathal, you can check out the previous episode in the podcast feed. Chains of Holy Fire, that's red and a white for an uncommon aura. Enchant creature. Enchanted creature can't attack or block, and its activated abilities can't be activated. At the beginning of the upkeep of enchanted creature's controller, this enchantment deals 2 damage to that player. Probably not that one. And even then, you probably don't want to kill the creature that this is enchanting that like belongs to your opponent. That would be a little bit more difficult. It's a shame that the rituals from Kothrasha Genesis, which are enchantments that like come in and out of the battlefield, those don't ever touch the graveyard in
Yeah.
the course of their sequence.
Yeah,
And the things that easily could have been auras in Curtain's Fall are all equipment instead. Alas.
Yeah, there's a number of themes that Voc-Gal has that are just missed by other sets.
Mm-hmm.
There's no other sagas, there's no other enchantment creatures, no things that create colorless mana in the other sets.
And there easily could have been.
And there easily could have been. Like these are things that show up in standard sets. So it's fun like seeing how thinly that line was dodged, completely like not on purpose by anyone, because nobody had seen each other's sets while we were designing them.
Speaking of seeing other sets and talking about the overlap there's a card called Songstoker, which is in Voc-Gal techniques. Songstoker is red and a white for a 2/2 uncommon creature human bard with vigilance, and whenever a triggered ability of a creature you control triggers during combat, you may copy it. Do this only once each turn.
Yeah, that one has been really fun seeing people like try and figure out what things you can do with abilities from other sets that would trigger during combat. There's one from Curtain's Fall.
Yes,
that got a lot of talk about it.
Jingling Inamorata. It's a rare 4/4 for 3 red and a red creature scion. Whenever this creature becomes the target of a spell or ability, if it's your turn, untap another creature you can. If you do, after this phase, there's an additional combat. This ability can't trigger more than twice a turn. And then Menace.
Yes.
So you can trigger this with Songstoker and then just keep going, potentially copying the thing that is targeting the Inamorata, or copying the Inamorata's trigger in particular itself, so that you could get 4 combat total if you have the Inamorata, a Songstoker, and enough triggers to go around.
Yeah, I believe we found it was 4 combats total, and there is a creature that would very much help get the Inamorata targeted by a spell or ability in Voc-Gal, which is Fanatic Siren. It's a common 1/1 Siren with haste for a red mana, and it has whenever a creature you control attacks alone, target creature can't block alone until end of turn. So you could target the Inamorata whenever a creature attacks alone to get that extra combat, 2 times, and then copy one of them for a 3rd extra combat.
Yeah, and probably stop your opponent from blocking very well.
Well, you're targeting your own creature with the negative ability just to get the trigger. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I can see how that works. The other fun thing about it also is, hypothetically, you might be attacking with your Songstoker in each of these combats because it has the vigilance, which is really nice. In addition to all of these things. We have the sirens, I think, are a fun treat in the set. That's a fun creature type to have show up a whole bunch. There is, what is it? Siren Song Audience. It's a common 4/4 for one blue and a blue. So that, hey, it's a great stat line there. It's a creature human bard. It does have defender, but then as long as you control a siren or saga, this creature can attack as though it didn't have defender.
Yes, the Sirens are a blue-red theme in the main set, and you can see a couple examples of them. They're like common token. So the idea behind Siren Song Audience was to have a creature that was, and they have these a lot in common in standard sets, a solid blue creature that is like above rate with defender, but can get that defender removed if you are doing something that the colors want you to do. So for blue and a red, it would be Siren Choir, Siren tokens, or other Siren creatures. And for blue and green, it would be Murmurs and other tokens.
Mm.
Something you might notice in Voc-Gal is that it is a enemy color set. So there's a lot of 2-color cards that are the 2 enemy colors. So there's 5 sets of 2-color cards in cycles of Voc-Gal a lot of the time.
Yeah. Thinking back to this little 1-drop siren with the fanatic siren, the red 1/1 haste whenever creature you control attacks alone, target creature can't block alone until end of turn. I also see, there's some other whenever a creature you control attacks alone. We've got Exalted, one of my favorite mechanics.
We do.
Showing up even more than once on a card, like Countros Fanatic. It's a red white hybrid, so spend 2 mana, red or white, for an 0/1 enchantment creature spirit at common with Exalted. Exalted.
Yes.
Pretty neat.
Yeah, the Exalted and Creatures Attack Alone theme for the set is supposed to be all of your fans cheering for your favorite performer, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the Countros Fanatic is really big fan of the Countros, who are the red-white faction in the set.
Mm-hmm.
That's where you'll see the other Exalted cards that are around in the set. There's a couple others, but they're pretty much, in the smaller set at least, small touch. There's, I think, 3 or 4 cards with Exalted or Exalted style triggers.
Speaking of this being an enemy color set, that is something that it has in common with Curtains Fall also, where looking at the requirement for making the micro set, and especially thinking about the uncommons, where you have, okay, no 2 cards the same rarity share a color identity. You've 12 uncommons, at least 9 of which have to be creatures. And so you could do like 10 to hit one of each color pair, or you could do something where you have, hey, I'm just going to do the enemy and then also have like monocolor uncommons.
Yeah.
I think what I ended up doing was having one colorless, one of each of the main like Wooburg monocolors, one of each of the enemy color pairs, and then one 5-color Wooburg that can also be cast for 2, but like is at least Wooburg to be its own color identity.
Yeah, I have a 5-color Wooburg card in the set that can also be cast for 5 colorless mana for that same reason.
Mm.
It's
Oh wow!
up
Okay,
at
so this is
Mythic.
Olgal's Chant. So it's white, blue, black, red, green, but each of those are hybrid. That they could be colorless, not generic, but colorless. It's
Yes.
a mythic legendary enchantment with sagas you control have. First chapter, create a 1/1 white and black spirit enchantment creature token with Decayed. Second chapter, add colorless. Third chapter, add colorless. And fourth chapter, draw a card, in addition to its others.
Yes, so it turns.
So this would make a Murmur create a 1/1 with Decayed, but still, and add 2 mana on the second and third, and then live a little bit longer and draw a card. Just
It also turns all of your other sagas into Murmurs, giving them the Chapter 2 and Chapter 3 of adding colorless.
oh, I wonder whether you might add like sagas you control are Murmurs in addition to their other types, but would that carry the
It
clue? Carry that
it
one?
wouldn't carry the mechanics. Murmur, the
Okay.
just like treasures or clues, the type murmur doesn't have any mechanical significance other than it being a common type tied to this mechanic. So, for example, like the clue equipment in Murders at Karlov Manor, they were all clues, but them being clues didn't give them the to sacrifice this artifact, draw a card mechanic. They
Huh.
just also have that because it's a common through line with clues.
Interesting. You learn something new about the weird metacontextual variables that is common token types in Magic the Gathering
Yeah.
every day. So we have prowess we've seen, we have exalted we've seen. We saw decayed there. I think there's a little bit of other decayed with this one
Yeah,
white black spirit creature
this
token.
the spirit creature token pops up a couple places. I realized as after I had sent out the set, I did accidentally make a card that goes very, very dangerous with finale and creating these spirit tokens.
Mm.
In a singleton format like this set is, it's not an issue, but if this were a larger set, this echoing soloist has a couple of issues that would need to be knocked out.
Do you want to read that for the audience?
Yeah, for reference, Echoing Soloist is a 2/2 black and white enchantment creature spirit for one hybrid white black. So you can cast that for one white, one black black. And the main body of text here is Finale. Whenever this or another enchantment is put into your graveyard from the battlefield, create a 1/1 white and black spirit enchantment creature token with Decayed. Decayed means it can't block. When it attacks, sacrifice it at the end of combat. So with one of these, you have a finale trigger go off, create a 1/1 white black spirit with Decayed. You attack with it, it dies, and you create another one, which isn't really what I wanted this to be doing. And if you had multiple, each time one of those enchantment creatures die, you would be creating 2 or 3 or 4, one for each echoing soloist.
Mhm. And if you had, like, a goblin bombardment out or
Yeah, you
something
could
like
just
that.
loop them.
Exactly. As soon as you got a, enchantment creature around to sacrifice, you could just instantly kill your opponent.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so there's a couple different ways I've thought about, fixing this in future revisions. One would make it only trigger off of non-token enchantments, but then that makes it not be finale anymore, and that would stop it from triggering off murmurs, which is something I want it to do. The other way would be to change the token it creates to be not an enchantment, but I want it to be able to create those for
Mhm.
other finale cards. So I think the way I am going to fix it in future versions is to make it only trigger once a turn, which stops you from being able to have it trigger off of multiple sagas in the same turn or a big bunch of auras on a creature that die, but I think makes it a much nicer play pattern, especially for a common.
Yeah. You get a little closer to, like, Alpheomancer or something similar where it's like,
Yeah.
"Hey, every turn cycle, I can have another 1/1 as long as the previous one is dying in the process."
Yeah.
So we've got a lot of different mechanics here. I see another returning mechanic is proliferate, like on Zealous Amplifier, which is a 1/1 uncommon creature human warlock for black green hybrid. It has death touch, and whenever this creature attacks and isn't blocked, proliferate.
You can play this with your saga or against your opponent's battles to, build them up, stop them from finishing summoning their creatures from beyond. This is I wanted it to feel like modern standard sets, which have a lot of these, one-off mechanics that are returning. So proliferate is one of those for this set. It's a guest mechanic, I think is what they call them.
Yeah. So we've got that way to add counters onto to double up progress on sagas, particularly, potentially even depriving your opponent of additional murmur mana by ticking up their murmur so it ends, or being like, "Oh, I'm gonna make sure your finale trigger isn't happening, like, in the middle of
When you
combat,"
want it.
or
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Things like that. Or, "Hey, I'm gonna make your your battle a little bit harder too." defeat. Going to have some incremental additions there. But you also have a mechanic for removing. Can you tell me a little bit about Purge?
Yeah, so purge is an action word, I believe, is what they're called.
Mm-hmm.
So when you purge a target, you remove all counters from it, unattach all auras, equipments, and fortifications from it. So this lets you kill a planeswalker, defeat a battle, reset a saga, or remove those auras from an opponent's creature, or unequip one of the equipments from Curtain's Fall. If we had any fortifications, it would also remove those.
Mm-hmm.
But surprisingly, we don't, despite how many projects in Beacon have gone.
Whenever we do this next, or hey, listener, if you want to submit your microset for this wave, you could give us the fortifications that add colorless mana when the lands are
The
tapped.
land becomes tabbed.
But I expect there will be fortifications again in our future. I'm feeling that siren song in real.
Yeah.
But that's very neat because it behaves so differently depending on what permanent or if you manage to purge an opponent's creature, you might be removing positive counters off of them. You might be removing equipment that's giving them a big bonus. You might be removing a whole bunch of little arrow equipment that they've painstakingly attached from
From
MW
archery.
from Peter's archery set. But if you purge a saga, it doesn't kill it the way we think of that typically happening. It just starts the saga over from the beginning, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if you
Yes.
purge a planeswalker, totally dead.
Totally dead.
And if you
And
purge a battle, it's a third separate thing from all of those.
and you defeat it, and you get its reward if it's a battle with a reward.
Mhm.
There's all sorts of design space with battles, so it could be any number of things that happen when you defeat a battle. But in the current landscape, it's all reward, it's all upside. Yeah. There are 2 cards in the set, one at Mythic and one at Uncommon with Purge. We'll talk about the Uncommon one because it's a little bit more simple than a Planeswalker.
Mhm.
Which is Purge the Record, an enchantment saga for white-black. It has Chapter 1, Purge target non-land permanent. Chapter 2, create a 1/1 black and white enchantment creature token with Decayed. And Chapter 3, create a copy of target token you control.
So you could, with the third, make another copy of the
Spirit token.
spirit token. You could, if you somehow find a way to make a copy of Purge the Record, you could just keep looping it with using the third chapter as like a
Copy
double dotted
itself.
bar line. Yeah,
Yeah.
create a copy of. But the thing that I think is very interesting is Purge the Record. On the first chapter, Purge target non-land permanent. What if it just targets itself?
You just get to keep doing Chapter 1 every turn.
And just keep targeting itself.
You just keep it around until there's something you want to purge. Yeah. You could have it as effectively an onboard purge trick.
Which, if you have Olgal's chant, so if you have this,
Oh,
if you
yeah.
have a legendary mythic enchantment out and this white black saga out, then you can keep purging it at the top of after as it enters and after your draw step, and just
To
adding
make
one
1/1s.
spirit
That's
enchantment
fun.
creature tokens decayed. Definitely not broken as far as 2-card combos
2
go
card
with
combos.
a wild
Yeah,
and
7 mana to create a 1/1 every turn is with Decayed is
yeah,
not too crazy.
fun in its own sort of way. I think that's what you would call a Johnny sort of mode of play.
Purge actually comes from a set I made a while ago. It's an updated version of it that I wanted to pull into Voc-Gal techniques because I thought it'd be very interesting because I added the battle creatures and I added, there were counters kicking around, and I thought it would be a very interesting way to potentially play off of other things in other sets. And I think it does play really interestingly. You brought it up. The arrow tokens from archery, or I think that's the main thing. I think there's a couple other equipment. There's the equipment in Curtain's Fall. We already talked about the 2 auras around, but also there's counters, 1/1 counters are not not uncommon. So that's another fun way to play around him with Purge as a, maybe not always removal, but at least a power reduction mechanic.
Yeah, that makes sense. There's one extra, in addition to the cycle of common battles, there's a mythic summon battle here. And
Yes.
I'm curious the kind of design that led you to it, or if you would tell us about Ship of the Spoil.
So, Ship of the Spoils, I needed a colorless mythic to fill out some of the requirements. And I was looking for a couple of more cards to play with the existing common battles. So, Ship of the Spoils came out. I was wondering, what fun things can you do with having an alternate casting cost? What if you just got to play this battle for free? It doesn't do anything unless you attack it, so there's still a cost. It's not going to be incredibly broken. What things are commonly colorless and you could probably do without paying a lot of mana? And I came up with a vehicle. I already had the 7 damage, so it's like, oh, well, what if it was a 7/7? I'll read out the whole card here. It's a 7/7 vehicle with crew 5. You can cast it for 3 mana or summon it for 0 mana and 7 defense, and it has indestructible, and whenever you attack but don't attack a player, create a treasure token. That was it's a triggered ability that gives you rewards for attacking battles or planeswalkers. So if you wanted to make like a battles deck in this little micro set, it would also help you get the colors of mana you need for the other battles, and reward you for swinging in hard.
There's something, it's a little bit funny to see, okay, 3 mana, indestructible 7/7. Okay. But I do need to have 5 power worth of creatures in order to crew it to turn on the 7/7. And then you look at
Yeah.
the summoning, and it is 0 mana, write a 7. 0 mana for getting this on the battlefield. That, I don't know, imagining the world where you play this to get some, like, casting 2 spells per turn sort of thing in one of the packs or one of the sealed environments could be interesting, just because it gets you a free spell, but it's like, do you wanna play a free spell that doesn't do anything unless you deal that extra damage? It's,
Yeah.
and even if you do Ship the Spoils, do the right on 0 on turn 1 or 2,
Yeah.
and then you cast Purge the Record and purge target non-land permanent, getting Ship the Spoils in on turn 2, it's still a
Doesn't
crew 5
get
vehicle,
you that
so
far ahead, yeah.
mm,
If we look at Siren Choir, which is a card in Voc-Gal Techniques, it is X blue, hybrid blue red, red. So X and 3 mana, requiring either 2 blue or 2 red, and one of the other. For an enchantment that says, when Siren Choir enters, create X 1/1 blue and red Siren creature tokens with tap, target creature can't block alone until end of turn. Activate only as a sorcery. Sirens you control have haste. So the Siren creature token and the what I've been calling the Siren Song ability is target creature can't block alone until end of turn. Activate only as a sorcery. It's a little bit of a glue token. Like, it's a way to have like your whole choir of sirens, but not have a big go wide strategy. You can still play with your prowess and your exalted by making it harder for your opponents to block. You might use this ability on their chump blocker, their weak creature, to stop them from being able to chump block. You might use it on their larger creature so you can get them to at least trade with one of their smaller creatures as well as take out your creature.
I think it also plays very neatly with or alongside Exalted by giving
Yes.
you creatures who, matter on the battlefield in a variety of ways, but who you don't necessarily want to attack with, who there's a profitable use for, and then also saying, "Okay, I have this, I don't know, this 5/5 Exalted, whatever. We both have some stuff on the battlefield. I'm going to make it so that this can attack more profitably. It's gonna make it so it is able to get through, or if you're gonna trade one thing, you're gonna trade for everything."
Yeah.
Some kind of combination of things with Exalted in that way.
Yeah. The other thing I think I'd want to bring in from Voc-Gal, the main set, that I actually couldn't bring in because part of the microset design was no lands.
Mhm,
So Voc-Gal has a cycle of lands at rare that I would have wanted to take some inspiration from.
mhm.
They are all lands with the Saga frame. They're lands with the saga frame, but they are not sagas normally. They have tap, add colorless, or tap, this land becomes a saga enchantment until end of turn. Put a lore counter on it.
Oh,
And then
oh,
they have chapter
yeah,
abilities. Add color of the land for
yeah.
chapters 1 and 2, and then chapter 3 is add 1 mana of any color.
Khord, this is genius. This is my favorite design that we've seen all day today. This is I really like this sort of way. You get it's a little bit vivid, it's a little bit funny. You can get 3 uses out of it,
Yep.
but the first 2 are just one specific color, so there's a reason to play one over another. Then you get that third, which maybe I just still want white because I just need that one color, or maybe this is giving me that one extra splash for an activation or discounting something in a fun way, while still then giving you the colorless, but not having the colorless be the identity of the card. This is very clever.
It also is a land that you can just toss away for a finale trigger.
Mhm.
Because it is an enchantment. It is a saga enchantment when it dies.
It is interesting also that because of the tap, this land becomes a saga enchantment till end of turn, put a lore counter on. It's like funky that it's not a mana ability. Does that make
It's
sense? Like
not. Yeah.
for whatever purposes or reasons that probably won't show up in this particular set, but it's neat. There's some neat things there.
Yeah.
Yeah, gotta be at rare, huh? They prep.
It's a rare. I didn't want too much, especially in the draft environment, too much access to colorless mana.
Mhm,
Which is real funny. Like usually, you have the lands at rare because they have too good of fixing.
mhm.
But these are at rare because I didn't want the fixing for colorless to be good, and they're like it's a complex card. I didn't want it to be heavily drafted and have people sacrificing all of their lands on accident.
Exactly, yeah. I think that makes
Yeah,
a lot of sense, but that card, I think, gets me excited for Voc-Gal Echoes in a real way.
yeah. That's part of the reason I really wanted to have them in Technique,
Mhm.
but there wasn't room for it in the prompt.
I think I also, maybe that's part of why I didn't think to do fortifications is because we didn't have lands. Maybe fortifications are the actual way to get around the no land limit, but I wonder if we maybe add land as a fun thing for whatever wave 2 might be of the micro set
And
sort of trying.
yeah. I don't think having lands in every set would be beneficial though. You have 4 micro sets, each of them 45 cards, and in all of them they had a cycle of lands. I think that's probably too much. So maybe we have a single take one of the common slots and make it a land slot.
Mhm.
Some form of limit on how many lands we should be putting in.
What if it was
So,
just we took off the no lands restriction? So you still have to do all of the other stuff. But if you want some of the the things to be, oh hey, I'm gonna make one of my mythics a land, or I don't know. It's interesting to think about. Oh, I need to have
yeah,
this many creatures. Some of them could be land creatures.
land creatures.
Who knows? What will they
Yeah.
think of next?
Maybe letting you only have lands in the like wild card slots
Hmm.
is the way to go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So speaking of new fun designs, we have the April Design Challenge. And this month's design challenge is Fool's April. Submit either a real card with a name and any relevant creature types changed, or a custom card. Either way, include spoiler text, use double brackets that way without the dot that would make it a repeat. Just like at the end of a line of music, either with
Mhm.
the real card name or revealing that it's a custom card in that like spoiler so that we can't see it. We'll be reviewing the cards and guessing whether they are real or original on the pod. So you can see whether you can fool Tim and I. Our
Yeah.
bonus points for this challenge are Fool's Gold, can be cast for a single color of mana, and Fool's Rules. Have it have 3 lines of rules. That's our challenge due April 25th.
Got about I think 9 days from when the pod goes up.
Doing that math, 6 plus 16, yep, you're right, 9.
I think I've got some ideas for this, and I'm not going to talk too much about them so as to not spoil it. But I hope you enjoy Voc-Gal because there may be some ties.
Mm-hmm. So that's our podcast for this week. You can join our Discord with the link in the show notes. Thanks for coming on, Khord.
Yeah, it's always a fun time.
Anything else you'd like to tell people about?
I have, as normal, my musical projects. Don't have anything particularly coming out right now, so just the general. I have my Linktree, my other socials up on Blue Sky, and every music distributor you can think of, from Napster to Apple Music.
You can reach me not at Tim F. Riley. You can reach me at Folly Persist on most socials media. And so, yeah, you can come and chat with us on the Discord in addition to submitting your design challenge submission. You can take a look at all of the different micro sets. We've got the little MSE hub. You can also come into the Discord to chat or to submit your own or different ideas or different combinations you've found. You can help out with, if you are hearing this, I believe are we on slot? We're on slot 12.
No, we're
You can help
slot.
out with the 12th slot of the current You Make the Pack as we're trying to land the plane of this story set and magic booster. Pretty exciting stuff.
We finally got a blue common.
Yeah.
It took long enough.
Mm-hmm. All cards are blue. Thanks for listening. And always remember...
But always remember, there is no Saint Bernard.
There is no Saint Bernard. The dogs are not named after a canonical saint. Fun. It's fun to say canonical saint because, like, that's what canonical means, right? Is like of the canon of the saint.
Canon.